Okay, so here we are starting again, and it is session number 5, and we are looking at rehabilitation. So a key aspect of the rehabilitation process after one has committed a crime is regaining the trust of the community. I mean, that makes sense, right? You have to regain trust of the community. So in the previous section, we explored how the rabbis instituted ordinances for doing tshuva, this takanat hashivin, to remove barriers. And we saw how removing these barriers actually sort of took all the teeth out of any punishment that we have, right? You can't even accept compensation if they want to come back with compensation, right? So now we're going to add a important dimension to this discussion, which is how do you regain the trust, right? How do you gain the trust of the people that you have let down? And this is something we've been thinking about for a little while now. Okay, so earlier, we established that tshuva is an essential pillar of Jewish life. So here's the questions. How can the community determine when an individual who has betrayed the trust has performed genuine tshuva, right? Are they really legitimate? Like, does he really mean it this time? Or is he just playing us, right? How do you know when it's real? And we start this, I think, when we're kids. It's like, when you're 5 and 4, it says, I'm sorry. Oh, that's not a real apology. You don't really mean it, right? Mm-hmm. So what do you have to do to demonstrate your sincerity? Okay. So let's look at 2 situations. And the first one we're going to look at is the lying butcher. The butcher who has, lied. Now, why would a butcher lie?
Money.
Right? And when is a butcher gonna lie? So my family has some history with the meat markets in Winnipeg. My great-grandfather was a shochet. And there was one time in the 50s where the shochet had 12 tongue for sale, but only 8 animals have been shechted, so you have to do the math, right? Something not right is going on there. And there was another scandal with chickens, kosher chickens, I think, which really upset the Ukrainian community because the Ukrainian community in Winnipeg only buys kosher chickens because they think it's better. Okay. So, okay, sure they are. Okay, so here's our first sort from the Talmud, from the Bavli. Okay. There was a butcher about whom it was discovered that a treifa emerged from his position. Okay, what's treifa? We all know what treif is, right? But what is treif really? So treif, in terms of a kosher animal, right? Because we always say treif is something that's not kosher, right? How can you have a kosher animal that's treif? So a treifa is an animal that would have died of natural causes, but for you killing it for food, okay? Mm-hmm. So what happens is when you get the animal, you examine the lungs. Now, I know nothing about anatomy, and I'm never going into medicine, but I have seen pictures, and someone has explained to me. Your lungs kind of float in a perineal sac type of thing. And it's kind of free floating. It's not really totally attached, it kind of sloshes around in there. Right? But whenever you get sick, adhesions, and so you'll get this sircha, which is where there's a connection between the surface of the lung and the surface of the sac it's in, and it's a connection there. And when they pull the lung, the animal out, and they see these sirchas, the question is, if I cut that off, is it going to create a hole in the lung or not? And if it does create a hole, then it's a problem. And if you have so many sirchas, you can't certify it as, you can't say it's good anymore, because this animal is clearly an animal that has some disease, right? But And here's where the word glut comes from, for those of you who like to collect these things, and why you say, well, why is everyone making fun of glut kosher milk? Here's the answer why, or glut, okay, because glut means smooth, okay? So if I've got a lung and I'm examining the lung, and it's got maybe one or two serchas, okay, I have to examine the sercha, can I remove it, can I make it better, whatever. But if the lung had no serchas at all, even I could tell you it was kosher, right? It's foolproof. If it's completely smooth, that's glut. Glut means idiot proof. I mean, it's like it does not require any expertise, right? It's on a scale of 1 to 10, where you have to have if it has more than 3, it's a problem. Well, if it's a 0, you're good. Okay? So that's where it's coming from. So a treifa emerged from his possession, right? He had an animal, he shechted it, he did the examination, said, okay, this is not fit to be sold as meat, but I'm going to sell it anyways because, livelihood. So Rav Nachman disqualified him and removed him from his position. You can't be a butcher anymore, right? Because you're kind of like an engineer at Boeing. You're self-regulating, but at some point we have to maybe not trust you if you're delivering things that have the windows fall off. The butcher went and grew his fingernails and his hair. Okay, so what does that mean? Grew his fingernails and his hair.
He's in mourning, or
Yeah, he's in mourning, right? He is like
he lost
he's
his job.
right. He's like in mourning, right? He's miserable. He's depressed, right? So Rav Nachman thought, I better restore his status because the poor guy's miserable. Now, is he mourning because he's repenting, like sackcloth and ashes? I've done evil, or is he mourning because he's just unemployed? Rav said to Rav Nachman, perhaps he's being deceitful. Maybe he's only pretending to feel bad. Rather, how can he repair status? It is on accordance with Rav Idi Bar Avin, who says, one who is suspected of selling treifot to others has no remedy until he goes back to a locale where they do not recognize him and he returns a lost item of substantial value that he finds, or removes treifot made of significant value from his possession. Okay, what does that mean?
Got to prove that he's repented.
Okay, so he's got to prove that he's repented,
But he's giving up something of value.
okay, he is giving up something of value, but who is he just demonstrating it to?
People he doesn't know.
Right, people he doesn't know. He is demonstrating to people that he does not know that he is actually scrupulous and above board. Okay? So it's like you have to go out on walkabout and try to find a community that you don't know and then wait for something bad to happen, then show that it works good. Okay. You have to take some, you have to do it in a way that either hurts yourself or doesn't benefit yourself. Okay, let's put a pin on that and hold that for a moment. And let's look at this next one. So here's Rashi. Rashi explains. Now, when I was in school, I was asked, one of our teachers would say, why do you have 2 index fingers? Why did God give you 2 hands? One finger to follow the text, and the other finger to hold your place where you are in the Rashi. Okay? I'm reading a book right now, and I'm reading it with 2 hands, and one hand holds the book open to the page I'm reading, and the other hand is slotted in at the footnotes page, so that when I get to a footnote, I can flip it and see what the footnote is and flip it back. So he's not too wrong. Okay, Rashi says, if he, in terms of, and he returns a lost item of significant value, if he finds the lost object of his friend, since by returning it, he demonstrates he has overcome his lust for money. Okay, great. Okay, so we've got a dispute here between Rav Nachman and Rava about what's required to restore his status. Rav Nachman says if he's just external signs of remorse. Crocodile tears or real tears. Rav is concerned that this was insufficient, requires significantly higher standard based on teaching from Rav Idi Bar Avin. And Rashi explains the higher standard requires him to return a costly object to remove expensive non-kosher meat, serves that he has overcome his unhealthy desire for wealth. Okay, so what are they really disagreeing about, these two rabbis?
Well, the other one about the overcome the unhealthy desire for wealth sounds like a very much an internal change, a philosophical or
Yeah.
how he views the world
Yeah,
and, you know, his worldview. So he's really
Yeah.
made it at a deeper level, that change.
okay.
They don't discuss, since back in those days, Jews lived in steckles or whatever, little self-contained communities. How many other butchers could they have turned to if this guy now is excommunicated out of the group? And what do they do for meat?
None. There's only one butcher in town.
Exactly.
Right?
So you want him to repent as fast as possible, so you
Yeah.
can eat your meat again.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. So, I think that one of the ways that they're disputing here is that, it's not enough to say that you're miserable, or you have to demonstrate that you've done things different, right? And this is back to Maimonides, who says, you really know you've done tshuva when you're in the same situation again and you choose not to do it. For Maimonides, in a theoretical, a person who has murdered his parents can never make tshuva because he's never going to be in a position to not murder his parents. Okay, that's humor in a way, right? But it's like, he says, well, you have to be in a position of temptation and resist the temptation. So the second opinion in here is saying that you have to be open to this loss of value of money. That shows, okay, he's developed a backbone. Now, why is it important for the butcher to move to a new location? Why can't he perform the tshuva while remaining in place? Why do you have to go somewhere else where they don't know you?
Because he's lost the trust of the community, so he has to go to a different place.
Right, he's lost the community and,
And
He
he
won't
can't make a
believe it.
living.
okay,
He has to lose all the status he might have obtained when he was the butcher. in his
uh-huh.
Current situation, start from scratch. Lose the wealth he accumulated. maybe.
Or, so when you go to a new place, what are people's basic assumptions towards you? You arrive new. Think Jewish community. I mean, you just arrive at a new synagogue, you walk in the door, Shabbos morning. What's everyone's reaction to you?
Who's
They
that?
agree to,
What
they
these people-
expect, they figure it's positive, you're
Innocent
They're
till
welcoming
proven
you.
hope it's positive.
innocent to
Prove
you
you hope it's
Yeah.
positive.
Right. So I'll tell you, you might think, who is this person? It's like, Lantzman, I'm so happy to see you. Welcome. Are you visiting town, or do you live in town and you're looking for a show? Right. Where we assume all the best, right?
Do we?
Yeah, we do. So, if he goes to a new town, he has the opportunity to sin again. Because nobody there is on notice that he's a bad guy. Right? If he goes to a new town and behaves nicely, and he has the opportunity to behave poorly and he doesn't, that shows that he's really changed his ways. Okay. Whereas if he stays in his old town, Of course, he's gonna try to demonstrate he's saved, because nobody's gonna trust him anyway, so he has to be honest. Right? Um. So when we were in rabbinical school, you had to prepare the reading in advance, and you'd show up, and then, the professor would call on you to read. And if you weren't prepared, it was bad. But so everyone made sure that they were prepared every time. And there's one fellow, he'd call on you, right? And if you weren't prepared, okay, you were prepared every other time, but he never called on you again. But you had to be prepared anyways. So it was like, I didn't go to that school. Okay, in the following, in the school I went to, Benzie Bergman, is like, if it was clear the person didn't quite know what they were saying, he would launch into some long story about something that was interesting but tangential. By the time he finished his story, the student had had enough time to figure out what he was doing. This is why I know so many stories about odd legal things that are really quite entertaining, and I'll share them with you another time if I haven't already. So here is another commentary on this passage, okay? And this is Rav Nissim of Gerona, and he is trying to figure out what's going on, okay? So the Ramban, Nachmanides, answered that since the butcher was appointed in a public role, and the public was reliant on him, they were strict upon him not to give him another appointment on this matter, and were suspicious that he was deceiving them. We don't find these high standards about other people suspected of transgression, right? So what he's saying is this example we've given, yeah, that applies to butchers, but maybe it doesn't apply to other people, right? Rabbeinu David, the student of the Ramban, added another reason why there was a suspicion that the butcher might be deceitful. Since they removed him from his position as butcher, there's a suspicion that his acceptance of the need to perform tshuva is not truthful, but rather it's in order to return to his position, which you guys all figured it out, right? What does that add?
Like public trust, it says, suspicion he's not truthful, maybe he's performing tshuva because he wants to return to being a butcher again, and that people put a lot of trust in him.
Yeah.
So maybe it's
Yeah.
not with the best of intentions, that tshuva.
Well, that means it's one strike and you're out, right?
Basically.
Or you do like Ronald Reagan and say, trust but verify.
Yeah.
That would be the way to do it.
Yeah.
Somehow,
Well, isn't this asking us to make assumptions of what the butcher is thinking?
Yeah.
We can't really know if all he's, doing tshuva for, because he wants to be a butcher again.
Yeah. And we don't know why he was cheating in the first place. I mean, maybe he was cheating because he ran into trouble. Maybe he didn't know what he was doing. Maybe he was threatened. Maybe there was a big macher who really needed, tongue that week, right? I don't know. So, what is it with everyone wanting tongue? I mean, that's okay.
Right, it's delicious.
Oh, yeah.
I think the rest of
Yeah, you'll take the rest of the
it.
Oh, yeah, the lungs
Okay.
to brains are delicious. Cooked with onions.
So,
I've heard.
okay, so we've talked about these two possibilities here. Here's the questions. So why is it significant that the public is reliant on him? Okay. Does the Ramban perceive tshuva process differently in a situation where the public was not dependent on the individual in question? I mean, does it matter if it's not the butcher, but it's just the someone who isn't in a position of authority? Do we hold the same rules? Or is it any different?
I think with the butcher, because he sold treif meat to his customers, he was causing his customers to break the law also by eating treif food.
Oh,
So he was affecting the whole community. Whereas if I just stole money from you, I'm only affecting you basically,
yeah.
and maybe your family.
Yeah.
But-
Yeah, one of my friends said to me, he doesn't like to do hashgacha because he likes to sleep at night. Or he doesn't like to do kashrut supervision because he wants to be able to sleep at night. And if you're doing supervision and you get it wrong, all these people are sinning because of you, right? Like all these people are sinning because of you. Right?
Aren't those kind of sins forgiven though? You know, if you don't know, you know,
But it's still a sin,
yeah, but
right?
you know,
Is there an element of intent in there somewhere? If you do it intentionally, that's one thing. If you do it
that's
as a
right.
slight error, it's not.
Okay, yes, okay, so.
You missed a lesion on the lung, but it wasn't intentional.
Okay, yeah, but here I think the notion is the guy was being.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. I look, if. So, when someone goes out and they buy sour cream. And it doesn't occur to them that maybe the sour cream needs a hechsher. I mean, what does sour cream need a hechsher, right? Until you look at the package and it says contains beef tallow. It's like, oh, okay, I guess that's why sour cream needs a hechsher. And it's like, well, it's too late now. We just fed everyone. Oops. It doesn't change the fact that they all ate treif, and it's a problem. Okay. So, how does this relate to Aryeh Deri? Who was introduced the previous time, right? How do we judge Aryeh Deri's tshuva, right? You may recall the Israeli politician who went to jail for fraud and then came back, right? Should he have demonstrated his bona fides as a decent human being somewhere where nobody knew him, like Australia or Botswana? Or, it's like, because everybody knows he's highly motivated to gain the trust of the people in Israel, and they all know who he is. But, didn't he, shouldn't he have like done some volunteer work and, I don't know, save the children or something like that?
Well, he went to jail for a couple of years, and after jail, he was not allowed to serve in government for 7 more years.
Right.
So he wasn't doing any crimes against government, against the people for that 7 years. And then the people reelected him to office after that 7 years.
Right.
They trusted him.
Right. And presumably during that 7 years, he was doing good things and not being a bad guy and keeping his nose clean.
Because he didn't have an opportunity to be a bad guy, right?
Yeah, I don't know.
Especially in jail.
If you don't have the opportunity,
Right.
what happens when you're given it?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think Sandy's inference of Marion Barry.
Yeah.
If people are stupid enough to bring him back, best Congress that money will buy.
No, that's true. That's true. Diane, by the way, do you have anything to add, or can you hear everyone okay?
She just
She's not
waved.
mute.
Oh, yeah, I know. I can see her muted, but I saw her smile. Okay, good. Okay. Just, you can chime in anytime you want, just,
Were there any control? I mean, it's an example to speak on, the book, but weren't there any controls like we have today, whereas the butcher doesn't examine the lungs himself, a rabbi does that. I mean, didn't someone else look at the meat after the butcher slaughtered it, or they rely on the butcher?
Yeah.
Thank you.
You have to rely, back then you relied on the butcher.
Okay, so he was
Yes,
everything.
yes, and you rely on the cobbler
Mhm.
and you rely on the builder, and our basic assumption in the world is that the things that are hidden actually get done, right? I've told the story about the synagogue in Tennessee where they had the opportunity to hire a mashgiach to watch over the building process. They said, no, we don't need to spend the money. We trust the contractor. And the contractor, anything that was invisible behind a wall, he didn't include. And so like the building fell down, okay? Because it didn't have any of the internal supports.
This is true.
Yes, this is true.
This happened.
I don't know when it was built, but the building was demolished in the last couple of years. It was terrible. It was terrible. It was not good.
Hmm.
Okay. Does time heal everything? Right? So moving back to our text. In the first section, we explored a disagreement regarding what the butcher must do before he can regain trust. The following text introduced a factor that is important to the rehabilitation process, that is time. The question was posed to Rav Hai Gaon, is about a cantor, Shalich Sibor, right? Person who's leading the service, about whom there was suspicion that he committed adultery. Can an adulterer be the prayer leader? Oh my, it's like the cantor in the Chazan in Winnipeg. Okay, I can think of examples of chazanim who have had affairs and then it's how can this person be praying on my behalf, right?
9 commandments. Hey, 9 out of 10 is not bad.
As a result, congregation removed him from his role. Cantor then took on public signs of remorse such as fasting, and after some time they were unsure whether to reappoint the individual as the cantor. So they addressed Rav Gaon with this query, quote, and they asked him, what should we do? So here's the response. And the response of literature is a wonderful thing, in that we have letters, 1.5 years worth of letters from people asking questions and getting responses. And we have this literature that we can, look at. It's this response to literature. And these are all real cases. So here it says, the letter of the law is that there is nothing which stands in the way of tshuva. Rather, anyone who does tshuva, God knows that they have remorse for their ugly behavior. When they direct their hearts that they will not return it, God forgives them. For human beings, though they cannot know what is hidden, like the person's feelings, and can only know what is revealed outwardly, when a significant amount of time has passed, and it does not appear that the person has acted inappropriately in public or in private, and one's heart believes that he has done tshuva, then we accept him. Okay. What do you think of that?
Depends on which side of the liberal conservative you are, But when I was in the military, there was a Navy chaplain. He was a Protestant. He was convicted at court-martial of adultery.
Yeah.
And he earned that great name, the Happy Chappy, but
Well, maybe we know why he was.
yeah, but he was court-martialed, so he did pay the price.
So
Dishonorable discharge, the whole thing.
So I'm thinking about the case that I brought not when I was advertising this course and in my article about the fellow who committed a murder when he was young and stupid, and now it's 20-30 years later and he's a lot smarter and he's a lot older and he's only done good things. And the family's like, nope, he needs to die, right? And it's like, but wait a minute, he's done tshuva, right? There are a lot of people out there who did stupid things when they were kids, right? You think about this woman in England who was stripped of her citizenship. And yeah, because when she was 16, she went and she, hung out with the terrorists and they had babies and And then she realized that what an incredibly stupid thing this was. And now it's like, well, I'm sorry, you've lost your citizenship because of something you did when you were young and stupid. Because, and this may not come as a surprise to anyone in this room, but when we're young, different hormones are active on our brains and we're little nuts, right? I mean, like, I really know that my children are, every year they get older and they get wiser and they get more mature and they're embarrassed by the things that they did as kids. But, you know, should you hold this thing against you? On a totally different matter, there was this one story I heard about of a fellow, he wanted to go to med school and he had failed chemistry, right? And so no one would accept him to medical school. And so he goes out and he got a master's degree in chemistry, and then he got a doctorate's degree in chemistry. And then he reapplied to medical school. And they said, I'm sorry, we can't allow you because you failed chemistry. And
Oh, wow.
and he said, look, if I had murdered someone, I would have been released from jail by now. Don't you think you can forgive me as an 18-year-old in college, sloughing off a course like an idiot? So they admitted him. He went to medical school. Okay. So, but still, right?
You gotta put up a fight.
It's like, can we accept you? It's I don't know. Here in America, when they look at your GPA, they look at your GPA from all of high school. In Canada, they only look at grade 12. Okay. When you apply to university, what you're doing in grade 9 and grade 8 and grade 11 is not really relevant to your academic ability when you are 18, right? So let's just judge you on when you were less stupid. And the law school I went to, they used a modified GPA. So get this. For every year that you had of college, they would drop your worst score. So if you, so if you had 30 credits, they take your average, take your GPA based upon your 25 best credit hours and ignore the 5 that, you just never understood chemistry, right? Because we're all gonna, if otherwise you're never going to take courses that you don't know if you're good at yet, right? Now, why should I be haunted forever? Because I thought that Plato was a good idea. Anyways.
It's like the modern dance class I took in college. I thought that was a good idea and I got a D in it.
And it haunted you for the rest of your life.
Did I ever do that?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I can imagine, right? So here you are, Ruth. It's like, I want to apply to medical school. And so I'm sorry, your GPA is terrible. This dance class really tore you down.
Only a 399. You get 4.0.
Oh, man. I
Yeah.
regretted that to this day. But
Yeah. Mhm.
Well, then there's someone who took 5 phys ed courses and aced them all. Got
Yeah.
5 points.
Yeah, and I took choir every year in rabbinical school and I got an A in it, but it never was applied to my GPA, so I'm kind of sad on that. They didn't count. Okay. What's the significance of time in the Teshuva process? Why does Rav Haidon consider to be important? Why is time an important factor?
Well, it sounds like you're trying to maybe, I don't know if you're giving them the benefit of the doubt, but you're looking at time, and this is saying, over time, we don't know what their inward thoughts are. We don't know how they feel, but we haven't seen anything demonstrated over a long period of time. And all you can go, unless he or she tells you how they feel or how they change their thinking, you don't know that, but you can see what you can base this on what you've observed or not observed if you didn't observe the butcher giving anyone any more treifa. So you're, in a way, it sounds to me like giving them the benefit of the doubt, but over time, so
Yeah.
you let that settle and you don't see them doing it anymore. And
Okay.
More time you repent, the more time you have to think about what you did.
Yeah, okay.
Well, time is a good indicator if you've actually done teshuva. I mean, you know, you need some external indicator. Well, time has passed 20 years.
Yeah.
He's been an upright, or they've been an upright
Mhm.
person.
Yeah.
That's a good indicator.
I think part of it is the notion that we're not static, right? We're not perfect. We're always evolving. We're always getting better, right? And I think that time is part of that, right? We all, none of us are who we were before. That's the great tragedy of Les Mis, where Javert is of the opinion, you know, once a thief, always a thief. And when he's presented with Jean Valjean's Teshuva, he can't live in a universe where there's evolution, and Javert takes his own life rather than acknowledge that, well, actually, he could be wrong. People do get better. And then there's the notion of the criminal mastermind who, you know, lays quiet for 35 years and then and revives himself to pull the master con after he's, you know, I don't know if that happens or not. How much time do you think is necessary, like, before we forgive someone?
See, isn't that like the punishment fitting the crime?
Yeah,
Okay, like, you need 6 months to get your thoughts together, then we'll readdress this. Kind of thing,
okay.
you know, so that 6 months, he's not in business, his family's suffering, doesn't have money coming in. His
Yeah.
wife had to go back to work. I mean, you know,
Yeah. So you think the time is, it's variable?
But I think there may be sins where no time is sufficiently long enough. Ever since the beginning of this course, I've been thinking about something that happened 30, 35 years ago. I think most of the people in this room will remember it. A Reform rabbi from South Jersey
Oh, we
hired
talked-
2 people to murder his wife so that he
yeah.
could then marry
Just
his
died.
girlfriend. He didn't want to divorce his wife because then the congregation would dismiss him, get rid of him. I don't know if you've heard of that. Well, he just died recently in prison.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And let's say, let's change the circumstances. Let's say after he served 20 years in prison, the governor gave him a pardon, so he's out. At the same time, the current rabbi of that synagogue retired. It was time for him to retire. So this rabbi who hired to murder his wife goes back to his synagogue and says, I want to do teshuva, and I haven't murdered anybody. I haven't done anything bad. In fact, I've done a lot of good in the 20 years I was in prison. I don't think the congregation would accept him back, no matter how long. There's no teshuva there.
They just merged.
I don't think it's just, you know what, it's not just a question of time,
Yeah.
you know, I guess maybe definitions can be important. It's the history, what goes on, you know, what in the beginning, then the middle, let's say, I'm kind of oversimplifying, beginning, middle, we're getting close to an end. You know, it's the history and events, you know, back thousands of years, you know, there was no social media. I mean, today you can find out almost anything. That's the other thing. Today you can find out almost anything in anybody's history. I mean, it's gonna get, I mean, it's
This
gonna get.
rabbi would, if you go on and you look his name up, okay, and everything would pop up, no matter where you went.
Yeah.
I mean, you could go to Australia and it
Oh,
would
yeah.
all pop up.
Yeah, back then.
Did they have Google there too?
They certainly.
Well,
did.
some congregations would and some wouldn't, so you can't fault many of them to say, well, I don't want a murderer as my rabbi, yes, regardless of whether they did tshuva. some congregations would overlook it, depending upon,
Uh-huh.
you know, how sincere the person was, how good he was, how active he was.
There was
You know,
a,
it sort of
there
depends on
was
the
an
situation.
Orthodox rabbi in Brooklyn, I forget where, but he was accused of assaulting women. And he appealed, and I think it may have even gone to trial. But I don't, but I think he returned to his pulpit. Even with the cloud hanging, did he or didn't he? You know, it all depends on the circumstance and the people doing the hiring or firing, or the people that have to exonerate you. I don't think you can, unless there's laws, I mean, you know. It's a different
Yeah,
story.
look at us today with what's going,
Oh, gosh.
you know,
Yeah.
a lot of people willing to overlook a
I
lot of
know-
things.
I know of, and we've talked about this, of a gentleman who wrote beautiful synagogue music, and we sing his prayers, and I didn't know that I was singing these prayers. And when I was outraged when I found out that this gentleman committed these assault, or was accused of. And, but it happened so long ago, I mean, that the people weren't coming forward. Well, I think a couple people may have come forward, you know who I mean.
Mm,
And we're still singing his songs,
mhm,
his melodies.
mhm,
His daughter puts on a show and travels with the music.
mm.
I still like Richard Strauss and
Oh,
I'm sorry, it's just, it's great music.
Yeah.
So,
He's the one that was one of, was it Hitler's favorite?
Wagner.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, well, I was thinking of Wagner.
But
Oh.
all through history, there have been musicians that did
Mhm.
not like Jews. I mean, you could, you know, but do we still, we say, I'm not listening to that. He was a Jew hater. Well,
So, look, I mean, if you want to talk about music, there's music by Jews, which is totally inappropriate for liturgical use, and we use it in liturgy because it's so beautiful, right?
Oh.
So if you, because, okay. Everyone loves Leonard Cohen's Hallelujah,
right.
okay? The lyrics, that's a song about just lust and desire and sex and I have trouble listening to it to any liturgical purpose without being reminded of, you know, the context of the lyrics, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, but that's my problem. But if you've never heard the song before, which is most of the United States because it was on an album that was never released in the United States, so you guys didn't know the song. True story. It was it was released in 85 in Canada, didn't even bother to release it in the States. And the music only came to anyone's awareness because of the movie Shrek. And then it was used in oh my, the 9/11 memorial. And that's when it's like, oh, this is the song that means emotion. But that's totally aside here. So Milt, coming back to your example of the rabbi murderer for hire, I'm thinking that there may be a distinction between bad acts and bad souls. And I don't know if that's Jewish or not, so I don't know if that's a huge aha or just a small aha, or rabbis just, you know, making this up, but I can understand someone murdering someone in an act of passion. I can understand someone murdering someone because they were committing a crime and they didn't understand. But when someone who is bright enough to get through rabbinical school is so morally dysfunctional
Broken.
or lacking or empty, they think, well, you know, it would be easier to have my wife murdered, is someone who just is not fit for playing with others or being with others. And just needs to be
Yeah.
isolated. And I don't think there's any coming back from that. I don't think there's any tshuva from that, because I don't honestly believe that person would ever make tshuva, because they do it again in a heartbeat. I like you, I can't get over that. It's like, no,
I couldn't get
you
it.
cannot come back in the room. I'm sorry, you're in a permanent timeout.
Well, it was it was more an act of passion because he lusted.
No,
For another woman.
I disagree.
Well,
I disagree. So here's, okay,
he involved another, he wanted the money that this woman had. He thought if
Uh-huh.
he got rid of his wife.
that's not passion, okay? Passion is, and maybe I'm not an expert on passion, but passion is, I'm overwhelmed with emotions and the chemicals in the brain that go with it in the moment, and I'm not thinking clearly, okay? But once you start going through the process of planning out an elaborate scheme to hire people to do things, that's not passion anymore.
Yeah.
That's
But
cold.
But doesn't it,
That's cold.
doesn't it hide or like makes your brain think differently? Because he lusted for this other woman.
It's not like acts of passion are usually while you're in the throes of passion. That's a pretty long throw. Okay, that's not a throw of passion.
He just had.
That's like,
I don't want to defend him.
that's an obsession.
Because
Exactly.
I don't want to
it's-
defend him.
As I often say, whenever someone asks me a question and they say, why does Boeing have this policy, or why is it this, or and I was like, just because I can think of a reason why this nameless, faceless corporation is doing something does not mean I have to defend them. I don't need to defend them. I'm willing to explain it, but please don't argue with me about whether it's right or wrong, because I don't have skin in the game. Like, I don't have to defend this guy. And I know logically you could think of it, but it's your time to waste doing that. It's like, yeah, maybe he can make tshuva, maybe, but
No, I don't think
he
he didn't even try, really.
sorry, it's just, ugh.
He declared he was innocent, so making teshuva was like,
I
No,
don't remember who he claimed innocent.
oh, yeah, he claimed, the DA said that he meant, that he hired these two guys, he knew them from the racquetball court, from the gym.
Mhm.
And he said he was kidding around, with them one day, but he didn't make any mention of killing his wife. Whereas the two people that killed her said, oh, yeah, we were at the gym and he said he'd give us $5,000 if we killed his wife. In her kitchen with a bat.
that reminds me of a scene in a TV show I saw recently. But that's neither here nor there. So let's pull this together. I think so. What have we established so far? We've established that tshuva is important, because without tshuva, no one would bother to do anything, right? And the human being is always capable of growth, and we tend to grow towards better. And tshuva is the mechanism that allows us to recover from the hiccups of, creative dance, or I can't think of any other way to survive right now than stealing, or, any of these other things, right? And there's some things that we want to say, no, there's no coming back from. And we care more about the tshuva of the people who are in positions of power. And yeah, so the sources that we got today about regaining trust, this notion of either you have to be outwardly miserable or you have to have an opportunity to demonstrate that you've changed your ways. Look, this dog used to attack people, but now look, he's playing with babies. It's very nice. Mind you, there was a thing in the news about this fellow who had a pet warthog. And okay, warthogs are kind of like, if your dog was an armored vehicle, okay? Warthogs are kind of like small armored vehicles. They're very dangerous and deadly, and they've got tusks. And but he had this warthog that he'd raised
Oh,
from
yes.
childhood, and it was lovely. And they would sit and all day until one day the warthog decided to kill him for no apparent reason whatsoever. Because newsflash, it's a warthog.
Right.
Okay. Okay. Whereas dogs have had hundreds of thousands of years of evolution that we get along well with dogs. Wolves, not so much. Okay. And yeah, you can try to domesticate a wild animal, but it's still a wild animal. And human beings are kind of like that.
That reminds me, kind of tangential, but is it a Pennsylvania guy who was raising this alligator as a, what do you call it?
Comfort. Support
Yes.
animal.
A support.
So, yeah, it was in the news.
Florida guy.
So, I don't know, where were they were in Florida, because he travels with this animal, right? So they were in Florida maybe, and somehow it got away and into some kind of swamp or something.
Yeah.
So I was wondering if anybody heard whether they found him. No? No?
I don't
The
think
owner
so.
or the.
The alligator.
The
Yeah.
alligator.
Okay, so this is what I remember.
Guy must be distraught.
If it's the same story,
Yeah.
it's Wally, and he had an
Oh. wait a
and
minute,
and he tried to bring it on the plane. They wouldn't let him bring it on the plane. Anyways, it was in his backyard because in his alligator pen, and some neighboring kids thought as a joke they would steal this alligator and put it in someone else's yard to scare them. And then someone else was scared and they called animal control. And animal control didn't realize that this was a support alligator. And so they just repatriated him to the swamp.
Yeah.
And there's no way you're ever gonna find that
You haven't
alligator.
heard it.
I mean, if you go into the swamp and say, Wally. You gotta-
Wally.
I think that the alligator was faithful to him because there were no other alligators around, but
He was well fed.
but
well
hey,
fed,
right.
there's girl alligator. Is interested.
Wally's probably hiding for sure because he said, he
Yeah.
may have had plenty of food and stuff, but I belong in the water.
Maybe, yeah. It's a big life.
Ah.
Anyway.
Alright.
Are there some factors which should be considered before someone's past transgressions are overlooked? Like, what are some factors that we should throw in before we overlook past things? Like, made plans to murder wife so that he wouldn't get fired from synagogue. Okay, so just pure evil and planning this. I've told you my theory, what I've learned about sociopaths. Sociopaths are some of the nicest people in the world. And some of the nicest people in the world are sociopaths because they've discovered that being nice is the best strategy. But if they discovered that you could get more by being an evil genius, they would do it in an instant.
There are enough people like that.
Yeah, more than you think.
Oh, yeah.
But thank God that, being good helps. What are some things that are like no-go zones for forgiveness? We've established plotting to murder your wife is one of them.
This comes back to October 7th. You gonna forgive these people?
And
And if you want to go back 80 years, Nazi war criminals.
yeah. So what if you were indoctrinated? What if, so hypothetical here. you can say, how can you not see Black people as not human? How can you not see them as human beings, as if you're a slave, slave owner? But on the other hand, what if we discover that dogs, or no, cows actually have human level intelligence, and we've been murdering them all this time? And once we discover that cows actually, can think and, talk about things, does that mean that we have to look at all of humanity and say, oh, all those people were evil, and we better tear down their statues, and, because they didn't see the humanity in the cattle? Like, if you're brought up to think that something is not human, after you come to the realization that, oh, everything I've been told my entire life is a lie, and it turns out these people are human beings, would you be worthy of tshuva? Right? If you have someone who's raised up as a little neo-Nazi and brought up to believe all sorts of hateful things, and then suddenly they get it. Do you hold the past against them, the things that they did? When, I wasn't attacking human beings, I was attacking animals. This is purely a hypothetical. I'm not, but so I think that someone who was raised as a child warrior in the Lord's army in whichever country in Africa it is, and then, you teach them basic morality, maybe the horrors that they perpetrated, maybe there could be some sense of, okay, you can start anew. I mean, you're still responsible for the consequences of the things that you did, but if you didn't know, I don't know.
You want to take that chance?
I think that, yeah, I mean, it's a really good question.
But aren't some people maybe more susceptible to what I'll call brainwashing? than
Maybe.
others? That's the other thing.
Maybe.
I'm wondering.
I mean, you
I
can,
think so.
you,
And then what, though?
so there's a theory, and then I think we should wrap up for the day. But there's a theory that unless you can manufacture a color, you can't really perceive a color. And that around the time of Homer, who's writing down the Iliad and the Odyssey, they don't have the ability to manufacture blue yet. And so they don't really have a concept of what blue is. And if you look through Homer, he never uses the word blue. The sky is either gray or white. The sea is like wine, right? And he doesn't ever actually use the word blue. It's interesting. And so someone decided to experiment with their kid, because parents, scientists make terrible parents, or maybe they make wonderful, but it's like they have the opportunity. So when they were raising their child, they never showed them green. Okay, so they just never showed them, and they taught the names of all the colors. They never taught them the name for the color green. Just never bothered to touch it. Guess what? When they showed the green to them, the green was a combination of blue and yellow. So when they showed them green, sometimes if it was more towards the blue side, they'd say blue. If it was more towards the yellow side, they'd say yellow. But they couldn't pick out green as its own thing. Okay. And it took them a while to learn how to perceive green even after that, right? So if you look at the sky, and I live with people who are colorblind, and I can tell, yeah, that's a different shade, but if I really think about it, but for the most part, no, it's the same color, right? So it is possible for people to be raised just oblivious of basic concepts and not get it until later. And sometimes they can learn to perceive green and sometimes they can't. And humanity is kind of scary. I think that the larger system that we're looking at and whether it's criminal law, whether it's Jewish law, the concept of Teshuva is in as much as human beings are fallible, how do we come up with a system to manage? And is it right you're out? Or how do we manage it when people make mistakes? And how do we reintegrate them? And do we err on the side of what's best for society or what's best for the individual? And this is a theory of how to do that. So thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you.
And Diane, thank you for joining us online. Oh, wait, no, you can't see. Okay, wait. Everyone waved. Let me, wait, no, hang on. No. Look, you can see what's on the screen. You can see that she can't see you. Okay, everyone, so, let me, wait, let's pull, I have to pull up the controls of the camera here. So,
Panning?
I'm gonna, first I'm gonna do that. And I'm gonna do that. And I'm gonna do, okay, so here's everyone, wave to them, okay. Yay. Okay. And I think this was our best attempt in both with sound and vision, right? Diane, it worked, there were no glitches, you could hear everything. Fantastic.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
If you unmute, we could hear you. Not interested.
Does she-
Okay. Sandy wants to know if you're okay. Yep.
Oh,
okay.
good.
Yeah. Does she-
Yeah, no, she does, no, she's
Yeah.
just playing the silent type, right? Okay, I'm gonna end this.
Bye.
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 And what we